As a trucker, no one ever taught me how to sleep. They just said, run miles and here's how to be compliant with your logs. Of all the things we should teach people at college and high school, we don't. How do you make enough money so you can be safe? How do you get better sleep so you can run more miles?
Good morning, everyone. I'm your host today, John Mahle, with the Stay in Your Lane podcast. Today we have Dean Croke, Principal Analyst, DAT. He's taken some time to sit down with us, so I'm very thankful. Dean, to start things off, I think everybody in the industry, or most people, have heard your name before, associated with DAT. I know you speak at a lot of conferences and stuff, but I'd love to I know you're from Australia, and you remind me from an accent of Thomas More, who I absolutely appreciate and enjoy. You probably know Thomas, don't you?
Yeah.
So if you would share with our audience today your initial beginning in the truck industry, which was not here, it was in Australia.
Yeah.
And then what drove you and what brought you here?
Yeah, I grew up in a farming business. My father and mother had a trucking business, so I grew up driving trucks as a very young boy. Ended up doing about 3 million miles as a driver in Australia, so ended up driving some pretty big road trains, mostly cattle haulage. Family's still involved in the trucking business. I still own and drive a truck, still have a CDL. I've got a 379 Peterbilt show truck. So I'm still deeply ingrained in the fabric of this industry. I see the entire trucking industry from the seat of a truck. That's my perspective. So even though I do data analytics for DAT, everything really is from the perspective of what it looks like over the hood of a truck. So that's sort of my lens, because I know what it feels like. I look at data from, how does it feel? What does it feel to sit on a loading dock for 12 hours? Like, I know what rates look like, but I know how you get there. I know what it feels like. So I look at, backhaul markets and headhaul markets, and I look at the perspective of rates from the time it takes for those rates to develop. Because rate per mile is one thing, but I look at how long it takes for those rates to be created. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't appreciate, is how long it takes for drivers to, I was in Salinas, and a lot of people don't realize that nothing really happens till about, 6 o'clock in the evening, and then it's crazy until 10 o'clock at night. And then I'm thinking, at 10 o'clock at night, that's not the time you want to be starting your work day and trying to get out of there.
After you've been sitting there all day.
Yeah, right. So that's how I look at rates through that lens. And then I look at utilization levels and where you've got to be and when you've got to be back. So I know what it feels like as a driver. That's sort of the lens I look at the entire industry. So that experience of doing a few million miles as an over-the-road driver has been very useful to put into perspective the 25 years that I've been living in the US, doing data science and data analytics, working in a range of companies in telematics, worked for Qualcomm, Spirion, Omnitrax Analytics, did a lot of predictive modeling work. So really, the last 25 years, I've used all of the prior years of experience in Australia doing data analytics work to try and help truckers here in the US be better, safer. Did some really cool things building models to predict when drivers were going to fall asleep at the wheel. Did some really cool things at Qualcomm predicting sleep. Turns out predicting sleep is really easy. And did some great modeling work taking ELD data from the ECM of a truck, feeding it into the cloud, and then running it into a model we developed to predict when drivers were most likely going to fall asleep at the wheel. It's really easy to do. You might say that sounds crazy, but we built some models that predict fairly accurately when drivers are most likely going to fall asleep at the wheel. Problem is, most people really don't want to know that, because in this litigious world we live in, that creates a breadcrumb of data that's incredibly makes you incredibly vulnerable from nuclear verdicts. Because if you have that data and you don't do anything about it, creates a level of liability that can put you out of business in a heartbeat. So we built some really cool things to make drivers safer. One of the things that I did as a result of all this, I stumbled into this, was I built a program where I started teaching drivers how to sleep. Because out of all of that, one thing that I figured out was no one ever taught me how to sleep. Because I went through the studies at Harvard, studying human physiology, I actually learnt the science of sleep, which as a trucker, no one ever taught me how to sleep. They just said, run miles and here's how to be compliant with your logs. Well, I actually figured out if you learnt the science of sleep and learned how to sleep in a work environment, you could actually run more miles and do it safely and reduce your dependency on stimulants, which was the biggest thing that I figured out how to do. So I started doing these classes, and I've done nearly 1,000 classes over the last 20 years on teaching drivers and their spouses on how to sleep, the science of sleep. It's about an hour and a half class. It's been one of the most transformational things that I've done in my career, and done it for companies like Praxair, DAT Freight, CR England, teaching drivers how to sleep within the confines of the hours of service. They have less accidents, they're more productive, they run about 10% more miles per week. It's a really interesting program. And that has been the one thing that has made the biggest difference. And of course, of all the things we should teach people at college and high school, we don't, which is how do you get better quality sleep? Because we have this prescriptive hours of service deal that we try and put over everybody's aging body clocks, this one size fits all, and it just doesn't work. And that's why we continue to have accidents and problems on the road. But that's sort of the introduction. It's a long-winded introduction, but everything really is focused about how do we make drivers' lives better, and that's sort of some of the things I do at DAT. But really, it's always focused on the driver, and that links to rates. So I talk a lot about profitability. But what I'm really trying to get at is how do you make enough money so you can be safe? How do you get better sleep so you can run more miles? It's all linked to how can drivers be better at what they do?
Being more efficient in every way possible in the industry.
Yeah, all that. And like I talk to drivers about how do you get better quality sleep so you can negotiate better? Because if you're not resting, like everybody behaves like a 2-year-old without sleep. We're all the same.
No, not me. No, not
No.
me.
So I like to say to drivers, hey, sleep on it.
All the really good drivers that I've worked with and that have worked with me, they seem to know how to manage how they sleep, number one. And if they were good at that and good at driving, then the next question is, were they good businessmen? Right?
Yeah.
Because, we want to help our carriers be better at their business.
Right.
I think most in my role, or in most companies, in our company role as a third party, as a broker, I think they're looking at what works for them 99 times out of 100, not what works for both. Right? So
yeah.
it's like your analytics that we talk about projecting rates. This is really, I think, the meat of the conversation for us today. And, when you do a bid, we'll use DAT information, which we contribute to, right? You understand the system, you know that. But there are outliers, depending on who the receiver is, what hours they're able to receive. All of those things change whether it's a desirable facility to go to have a reload. You can have two loads that are 30 miles apart.
Right.
And the rate be totally different on both.
Comes to the time factor can be
the time factor, the receiving problems factor, whether they're going to try,
This is where ELDs completely changed the whole ball game for those guys you're talking about. Because up until the ELD mandate, you could get by. So for the people that were really experienced, I think that you could build in margins of profitability with paper logs. And I think a lot of folks really didn't understand what paper logs afforded you the ability to do, which was build in margins of profitability through flexibility. Right? Because you could make the numbers add up and you could build in that delay on a loading dock and still make it add up to 11 and 10. Right?
Right.
So long as you didn't create a breadcrumb that said you were here when you were there. Right? And it didn't mean you were less safe or doing something risky. It just meant you could get unloaded when you needed to and the truck was pointed in another direction when it wasn't.
A three-day run could be made in 2.5, and you could make up for that
Yeah.
slack because you could adjust it.
Yeah, you could wait for traffic to die down, whip in and out at 10 o'clock at night, and and be in bed and headed in the other direction instead of waiting to go into traffic during peak hour the next morning. So I've been a really big advocate for, if you could build in flexibility of a paper log into an ELD, you have the best of both worlds. Because this is a bit of a digression, but in 2005 I built a consortium of over-the-road carriers into a program called Hours of Sleep. So I had about 14 over-the-road carriers, large truckload carriers, and we went to the FMCSA to apply for an exemption to 395.14, and we wanted to be able to put together the 11 and the 10 however we wanted, but it would still add up to 11 and 10 at the end of the day.
Right.
So you put together, you drive 3, sleep 4, drive 1, sleep 6. The requirement was, though, and I was using all of our practices from Australia's FMP, Fatigue Management Pilot, that we developed. And by the way, when I was also general manager of the ATA in Australia in the late 90s. I was general manager of the Australian Trucking Association. We hosted the ATA, the FMCSA, Transport Canada, and NHTSA. I hosted them around our leading truck companies. And some of that best practices got written into the 2004 Hours of Service rewrite. Some of the best science from there. What we showed them was how we did that, and some of it made sense to them. We knew from science you had to get 6 hours continuous sleep every 24. If the human brain doesn't get 6 hours continuous, you really can't perform as a trucker. Or the human brain just can't perform on less than 6 hours. If you can get 6 hours continuous and then supplement it with naps, you can really run pretty well day in, day out as a human.
So let me ask this question.
Yep.
Are there exceptions?
Yeah, you could do some days. So you could sleep 3. So you could do 2 blocks. Right, you've got to get 6 hours. So you need to get 6 hours every 24. Let me rephrase it. Ideally it's 6 hours continuous. Now you could do 3 and 3, right? You could do 3 and 3 with a half-hour break. Half hour, you could be awake for half an hour, right? But if you can get 6 hours continuous every 24, you're in the best possible place. So what we did with the hours of service, hours of sleep, we said, let us do the 11 however we want. We'll have the 10-hour break, no 14-hour clock, and 6 hours continuous. Well, it sounded perfect, and the reality was, with the modelling, you could actually run another hour per day than what truckers were getting, roll time. So it was a real big productivity boost for all these truckload carriers. Well, it got voted down in an Hours of Service subcommittee because it was going to give all these carriers a leg up over everybody else in the industry. It got really political. If you could get flexibility, and this gets back to your question about profitability and those carriers that really knew how to run their businesses, a lot of that went away when Hours of Service changes came in with ELDs, because you lost the flexibility to make those sorts of changes to build in all of the things that go wrong on you.
Well, I saw the biggest impact on it when it affected multi-stop deliveries.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was no big deal for me to take 3 or 4 stop loads.
Yeah.
Because we would crank them out, right?
Yep.
And you could make money.
Right.
You could make it more profitable. If you were willing to work,
yep,
you could put some more money in your pocket.
Yeah.
That all got taken away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is always fascinates me because you really get it. Like
Yep.
we get it, right?
Yeah.
We see it at that
Yep.
same lens.
Yep.
My question for you is, I saw something posted where you anticipated 2026 is going to be pretty flat like 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And 2027 would be our positive year where the industry goes up. Do you feel that that's still the case?
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.